Welcome to the Third Eye Show, which brings you ancient wisdom as well as cutting-edge investigations into the mysteries of the universe. The Third Eye Show celebrates our diversity, like the unique beauty of each individual wave, and our oneness, like the magnificent ocean from which each wave emerges. We are all one in spirit as we live on this earth plane. The third eye is said to be able to see into the spiritual and psychic realms. At a time when our lives, our country, and our planet are undergoing intense transformations, we will explore topics that will fascinate, enlighten, and empower. Join us as we witness the thrilling ways spirit manifests in our daily lives and the varied paths we choose to create heaven here on our earth. The Third Eye Show is created and offered in love and light.
On today's Third Eye Show, we take a look at the many lives of the Irish hamlet known as Riallaig. And you thought only people reincarnated. Then, we examine the practice of reading the tarot. It, too, has many more facets, many more lives than you might think. Prepare to learn something totally new on today's Third Eye Show. Once upon a time, there was an emerald of breathless beauty on the littlest finger of the furthest hand of the land of Ireland, and it was called Riallaig. As the 18th century English historian Arthur Young observed, there is something magnificently wild in this stupendous scenery, formed to impress the mind with a certain species of terror. All this tract has a rude and savage air, but parts of it are strikingly interesting. The mountains are bare and rocky and of a great magnitude. The vales are rocky glens where a mountain stream tumbles along the roughest bed imaginable. Some of these streams are seen and the roar of others heard, but hid by vast masses of rock. Immense fragments, torn from the precipices by storms and torrents, are tumbled in the wildest confusion, and seem to hang rather than rest upon the projecting precipices. Its power was such that people had no choice but to come. It haunted their dreams, as though this rough and riotous place were somehow the warm light of home at the end of a long journey. Without understanding the ancient forces that drew them on, they put aside their former pastimes and aspirations and arrived to take up new lives at the end of the world in Riallaig. First, the Milesians came forth from the Purple Mountain to practice the old ways among the mists that slipped in from the sea. The Milesians are thought to be the earliest inhabitants of Ireland. They are said to have arrived in the spring at the festival of Bealtaine, and soon they became the high kings of all Ireland. These old ones erected colossal boulders in circles that pointed to the stars and told of the moon. Within these sacred enclosures, they may have welcomed the seasons and appealed to their gods for guidance and protection. They may have performed ceremonial magic and made music and spun legends from the fine threads of myth and imagination. These stone alignments also may have marked their sacred burial grounds. The body of one-time Milesian ruler Erenin is said to lie in state, hidden from the world under the stones of the Riallaig alignment. In due course, the Milesians passed into legend, and a generation of early Christian monks seeking lives of prayer and silent study came to Riallaig. Many monks moved on to live on the impossibly steep slopes of the two Skellig Islands, Skellig Michael and Little Skellig, situated in St. Finian's Bay, just 12 miles away, and dominating the shoreline. Here, for 600 years, generations of lonely clerics fished for their meals, tended their fragile gardens, and prayed in the church they had built at the summit of a 670-step pinnacle. Monks such as these may have been the only literate persons to survive the depredations of the Dark Ages. Surely it was in lonely outposts such as those of the Skelligs that rare and treasured written volumes were preserved for posterity. And for this, we must thank those hardy souls who lived among the gannets and the Gaels of the Skellig Islands. But one wonders, what was the relationship between the Skellig Island monks and those of the Cill mainland? And why did they travel to the islands in the first place? Were they simply solitary by nature, truly devout, or in retreat from the cruel, warlike world of the Dark and Middle Ages? Whatever the truth, today, beside the road to Bolus Head, one may find all that is left of the early Christian monastic settlement of Riallaig, an oratory, 2 inscribed stones, and traces of so-called beehive huts. As the gaslight era gave way to the 20th century, the village of Riallaig was once again alive with industry and commerce. Never a prosperous part of the world, farms clung to the steep rocky terrain, and fishermen pulled a living from the treacherous sea. It was a hard life, to be sure, but a good one, as people tell it, a life in which the comforts and conveniences we take for granted, even such basic amenities as electricity and plumbing, were utterly unknown. And yet, it was a life in which everyone was useful and valued and had a place. A life in which songs were sung and stories were told on long, blustery winter nights, and one hardly felt the chill for the warmth of one's companions. Into this life, in Riallaig, was born Sean O'Connell in 1853. Sean O'Connell respected the old traditions. When traveling beggarmen came to Riallaig from the south, he welcomed them, and he fed them. And they rewarded him with such tall tales as they knew, and he stored up those tales in his remarkable memory, lest he forget them, and he shared them with all who wished to listen. In the summertime, among the fields of pennywort, foxglove, and fuchsia, Sean told the tale of the russet night without hair or laughter, the 3 brothers on the lonely island, the message from heaven, and the enchanted well. He said it was a quiet and peaceful world in those days, although often a lean and hungry one. But the nature of life is impermanence, and so, as time passed, so did interest in the old ways, and the young no longer sought him out for his tales. In Sean's later days, it is said that he told and retold to himself the stories he had gathered over a lifetime. He could be seen talking to himself while working in his gardens, walking home up the hill, or herding cattle on the hillside, regaling himself with the old yarns lest he forget them entirely. And they might have been lost to us all if they hadn't been preserved by scholars before Sean's death in 1931. Luckily, much of the rich cultural heritage Sean acquired over his lifetime has been preserved and will soon be published by the University College in Dublin. As Sean O'Connell and his clan died and moved away, the village of Riallaig became abandoned and seemed once more to wither and die. But as we have seen, this place has a special magic that calls life forth, and so began Riallaig's present incarnation. Noel Campbell Sharp, publisher, art gallery owner, and entrepreneur, spearheads the project that has taken Riallaig from a ramshackle collection of derelict cottages to an international artist's retreat. She said, and I quote, "The American Ireland Fund's grant helped kickstart our whole project and gave us the confidence to believe our dream could come true. We have had over 17,000 applications for free of charge residencies. Here is where young artists meet the world." Today, Riallaig offers writers, poets, and musicians, as well as painters, an opportunity to create their art far from the pressures of modern life in this wild and gorgeous seaside enclave. Artists are requested, although not required, to donate one work to the Thatched Roof Art Exhibition Center and Cafe that helps to keep funds flowing to the project. As the good neighbor that it is, this center offers free art lessons to the local teenagers, thus encouraging the next generation of artists. The tiny cluster of gray stone cottages that comprise the village clings to a wild and remote hillside that tumbles to the sea. It seems to perch on the end of the world. As a Connecticut artist who enjoyed an internship there told me, tourists seem to think the place is Disneyland rather than an artist's retreat. One morning, she stumbled down the stairs in her pajamas to make herself a cup of tea and found a tourist in her kitchen, a woman who plainly assumed she was in a folk park of some sort. Consequently, Riallaig is neither signposted nor tourist-friendly. Mike and I found the village finally, mostly by driving around comparing the landscape before us to a small photo taken off the internet. We were, of course, quiet and respectful while there, taking these video clips and photos from the road, and certainly not peering into windows or jangling at doors. But we could feel its magic, even from afar, as people have been drawn to it for thousands of years. Parenthetically, at one point, I could have sworn a young woman was walking beside me. We commend Riallaig's revitalization. Riallaig continues to cast its spell over all who approach, whether fisherman or folklorist, monk or musician. All who draw near feel its power. Today, the village expresses itself as an artist colony, but as we have seen, Riallaig, like all of us, has had many lives. To start, what is the tarot?
What is the tarot? That's a good question.
Well,
okay, the tarot is basically a deck of 78 cards, and it has suits like regular playing cards, but they have different meanings to them. And there are 21 cards called the major arcana, which are concerned with, I would say, probably more significant events in someone's life. Mm-hmm. And then there are suits with 10 cards apiece, mm-hmm. and also court cards, kings, queens, pages, and knights, although they might vary depending on which deck you use. When we're talking, we're basically referring to the Rider-Waite tarot deck.
Right, and I should like to mention there are lots and lots of different, probably hundreds of different decks.
There are hundreds with such a variety of themes that you can pretty much find anything.
Yeah, whatever one you resonate with, find a deck that you really like, a deck that speaks to you or the images really speak to you. We both like the Rider-Waite. We use the Radiant Tarot, which we like very much. That's the one we'll be talking to and referring to. But you can use these basic precepts and apply them to any deck.
And there's so many themes. There's like Dragon Tarot, there's Angel Tarot, Animal Tarot,
just so Merlin Tarot.
Yeah, there's so many to choose from. So I just tell people when they ask me what's the best deck, I always say there isn't one.
There
is
no best
deck. Depends on which one calls out to you.
Exactly.
Which one you like. Or you can have more than one deck.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, some people do use more than one depending on their mood that day. So anyway, back to what the tarot is. They're basically the 78 cards that I just described, and they're used really for spiritual growth and spiritual development and insight, getting deep insight into a situation. And also the numbers on the cards have some symbolism.
The colors have symbolism, the images are symbols. There are so many different symbols in the cards. If I see something showing up, for example, lilies signify death and roses signify life. There are several cards that have both roses and lilies on them, and whenever I see that, it suggests to me that we're talking about the totality of experience. If it's a power card, we're saying that you're really empowered at this point in your life over any aspect of your life. You really, in power. You have power over all the aspects of your life. If it shows up in if we're talking about your career, we're talking about the world is your oyster, pretty much that
the world
kind
is your
of thing.
oyster. And also that you may go through the gamut of all experiences.
Yes, and it also
Yeah.
could mean that it's going to last your whole lifetime, that this is a course you're setting for the long term. So that's just one way in which the symbols suggest different meanings, and there are lots of different symbols. So choose a deck that speaks to you, and then we'll give you some ideas about how to really get the most from the cards, and to really learn the meanings of the cards, the meanings for you.
For you, the meanings can sometimes be different, for each people. Sometimes I'm always very interested in that when I give a class on tarot, how differently sometimes people see the cards. So
That is interesting.
it is. I find that fascinating.
Yeah.
I really enjoy that.
Yeah, I do too.
So, so we talked about the suits, the numbers, the colors, and also some of the other things. For example, seeing green or seeing something, a lot of lush foliage or trees, or a lot of growth, can actually mean growth in your life.
Right.
Or flourishing.
Exactly. So how do the cards work?
That's a big question.
What's actually happening? Well, the cards that come up are I believe, are the cards that the sitter needs to see. I believe that the cards that the sitter pulls are the ones that he or she needs to have read.
That's what I believe the same thing. And I think every reader does it differently, but in person, in an in-person reading, I have the sitter, or the person having the reading, shuffle the cards to get their energy into it. And in a phone reading, I'll be shuffling and I'll say, tell me when to stop shuffling. And some readers don't do that, but it doesn't matter.
It really doesn't
It's
matter.
what feels right.
At the end of the day, I think that your spirit guides or guardian angels or higher self or grandma on the other side, or whoever you think of these spirits as, I think it's the spirits on the other side who are guiding your hand as you're choosing the cards, and they're choosing the cards that are going to reveal the information that you need for your highest good, to serve your highest good at that point in time in your life, and that's really what it's about. So it doesn't matter who cuts the cards, or
It doesn't really.
you can read them from afar. Psychic ability doesn't have any space limit or
There are no
time limit.
boundaries
There are no boundaries
with energy,
to it.
and
I
this
can
is all
read
energy.
for my niece in Australia, hi Becky, and and it will serve her. It's not a problem at all. You can read for anybody, anywhere.
Anywhere on the planet, which I've also done too.
Yep. I love to show people the
Oh,
symbols.
me too. And people love looking at the images on the cards too, because they're really beautiful.
They are beautiful, and I think it
and fascinating.
reinforces, if, let's say someone's going through a rough patch right now, and I see an image of empowerment, or that you're going to come through this just fine. If I can show that to you, I think, and say, as you're moving through this experience, remember this card, keep this image in your mind, and it'll help you. I think that really serves the sitter.
Energy really is the way that the cards work, and what you were saying about the cards, getting the cards that you need, and maybe not the cards that you want. So in other words, the cards that come up may address a situation different than the situation you think that you want to know about when you come in for your reading.
Yeah, that definitely comes up.
And usually there's a reason for that. When that does happen with someone, they'll say to me, okay, I know I really know that I have to deal with this, but I was actually thinking about something else.
But I really wanted to know about, when is my house going to sell?
Exactly. So what comes up is really what the person needs, and I
Not
too believe
necessarily
that-
what they want.
not necessarily what they want at that time, and it does come through, like you said, through spirit, whatever your concept is of that.
Yep. So is tarot a religion?
No.
No,
Definitely
tarot is
not.
not a religion. That's a question that comes up, and the answer is a big fat no.
A huge no.
Yeah, tarot is not a religion. It is a method of divination, and doesn't divination mean the same thing as the devil? No, big fat no. No,
No devil, no Satan.
no Satan. Sorry, no.
Not evil.
No
And the-
sale, no sale.
And the focus usually with, I know with both of us anyway, is usually, there is some divination and maybe some predicting, but it's also more about gaining insight into your situation and
Yes.
understanding things on a deeper level, rather than
Yes.
saying, next Tuesday, you're going to meet a tall, dark, handsome man. And it goes a lot deeper than that.
Absolutely. absolutely. The information is coming from your spirit guides.
Exactly.
And so the information, think about it, what do you think your spirit guides are focused on? Are they really focused on, are you going to sell your house on Tuesday? I don't think so. I mean, that may be, they might be, that could be really important to you. That could be part of your life's lesson to move away from that area and sell that house. But more often than not, they're really looking at the big picture. And that's what comes through is the big picture. We're looking at your soul lessons. What comes through generally are the reasons things are happening, the patterns that you're creating, suggestions for how you might change patterns if you're not happy with the results, if you're not happy with the way things are going. Sometimes they'll suggest ways that you could change those patterns.
Exactly. And sometimes, I'll find myself saying to someone, if you continue going along the way that you are, doing the things that you're doing them in such a way, this will be the outcome, but you have control over it. And if you change how you do things, then the outcome could be very different.
So what are you saying there,
true.
Patty? I thought tarot made things happen. Reading the tarot.
Did you? I think a lot of people out there probably believe that. And the tarot, I think we need to be really clear about that.
We need to be really clear about
that. The tarot
this.
does not make things happen. The only person that makes things happen for you is you.
I like to think, I think I may have used this, this image before, but it's worth repeating. I think of it as an astronomer who knows when an eclipse is going to occur, knowing that given the current circumstances, unless something changes out there in the cosmos, that an eclipse is going to happen at a certain time. That is not making the eclipse occur. And it's the same thing
that's a great analogy.
With divination.
It really
if you see that something is coming, that's something coming if the energies that are out there remain the same, unless you change something. And of course, our lives are subject to our free will. But if you see that something is likely to come, given the circumstances or given the energies that are out there now, you're not making it happen. You, the sitter, are making your life happen.
Yeah, remember that we
I'm
all,
not
we all
making
have
your
free
life happen.
Yeah, we all have free will, and also it's important to remember that we as tarot readers cannot solve your problems or fix your life. We can help you get more insight into it so that you can do that, but we can't. Some people seem to think that we know everything.
They're really endowing us with these powers
that we don't have.
No,
we don't
supernatural abilities, and
that we're oracles, and
or that we're evil, and we're none of the above. We're just people who have a special sensitivity, who have developed a sensitivity. It's not a special sensitivity, it's something that we all have. We all have this sensitivity.
We can all develop it.
We can all develop it, absolutely.
So all we're doing is taking the images of the cards that are laid out and basically just interpreting them.
That's right.
And they tell a story.
That's right. They do tell a story. They do suggest the past, the present, and the future. They can show all three. Sometimes they show past lives. They show the distant past, because that's relevant to what's happening today. Sometimes the genesis, the beginning of what you're going through right now, maybe it began 400 years ago in some other time and place, and you're still working through that same pattern, or you're in the same relationship or the same type of relationship. Could be with the same person in another incarnation, or with another person, but it's the same relationship playing out. And if that's the case, and your guides want to bring your attention to that, to give you an opportunity to have that knowledge and make clear choices, perhaps a choice to change things, or at least the clear knowledge, they may show you. This has been going on for 400 years.
Yeah, it may be time to take a fresh look at it.
And I always say to people, I always say to people, I never say to people, this is the work that you're supposed to do now, because I don't believe that. But what I do say is that this is a time when the universe is conspiring to help you. The forces are being brought to bear, that the support is around you, the conditions are right for you to do this work. You're being supported to do this work. And this work may be reconciling with your mother, ending a cycle of abuse, or, you know, any of these other things. The conditions are right for you to do this work. It doesn't mean you have to do it now. You don't have to do anything. That's your free will.
It just means that conditions are such that this would be a really great time maybe to start looking at this and maybe making some changes.
Yes.
And that's why...
If you're ready, if you feel ready to do it.
And if you want to. And that's why certain things will come through in a reading for that purpose.
Exactly. Yep. Exactly. You know, we can do our work at any time we're ready to do it.
Exactly.
But there are some times that are better than others throughout the course of our lives. When you're not going through a crisis or something like that. You know, when let's say you're going through some sort of crisis, financial, emotional, physical, whatever, might not be the best time to look at your stuff from 400 years ago. Maybe it is. Maybe that's the perfect time for you. But by and large, it probably isn't. And so Spirit knows. Spirit knows when it's time for us to take a look at this or to do certain work. And they point that out. And that does come through in
Spirit
tarot.
does know. And the cards are never wrong. Sometimes a reader, and even us, can sometimes misinterpret a card.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, but the cards themselves are always correct. And
Yes.
always right on, because they are coming from,
The divine
I believe, you know,
source.
from a divine source.
Yeah, they're coming
So
from a
they-
place that is perfect. We aren't perfect. We can make a mistake in interpretation, but Spirit is perfect. The information is perfect.
Yeah, so that's I think that's really important.
Yes. But be clear about this, that getting a reading is not creating anything. The reader's not creating it. The tarot cards certainly aren't creating it. And the information isn't coming from cards. I've heard that so many times.
I know. Well, sometimes I even say that, but I don't really mean it literally. I'll say, well, the cards are showing, but it's not really the cards.
No,
It's really spirit.
the information
or
is
higher
coming
self,
from Spirit.
Spirit guides.
Yeah, it's not coming from cards. The cards contain symbols. The spirit guides use the symbols to communicate information to us. If we can interpret it properly, if we can interpret it sensitively enough,
Then we can get the message.
we can get
If
the
we can-
message across to you. That's how it works.
Yeah. When I really see somebody receiving the information and really taking it to heart and knowing that they really got something out of it, I mean, it's very moving for me, and I feel privileged to be present for that.
Actually, that's, I think, the perfect word to use, because I feel deeply privileged to read for people,
I do too.
because without them really, I think, focusing on it, they're giving me access to their whole spiritual process, to their lessons, to their thoughts, their hearts, even their souls. I mean, the things that I see and the things that I've learned are
Me too.
profound. I've learned profound lessons from reading the tarot, and I'm very privileged to be in a position where people will give me access to that information of that nature that's so deep and so profound.
It really is, and it is very, very moving, and it is a privilege. I mean, I really feel like it is a privilege. And one thing that sometimes people will say, "Oh, can my sister come in with me?" Or I don't, and I'll say to them, "Well," or my friend or whoever it is, and it doesn't bother me if someone else is sitting there.
No, it's fine with me.
But I just make it clear to the person that, you know, hey, this person had better be really close to you, and you shouldn't have secrets from them, because I have no control about what's going to come out. And if it's something that you're not comfortable talking about in front of this other person, or something that maybe they don't know about, I mean, that can really kind of ruin the reading for you.
Right, absolutely.
So I always tell people that.
I think a reading should be undertaken in the spirit in which it is given, which is seriously. It is a serious undertaking.
It is.
I always set the intention, and I like to do this out loud, I like to say it out loud, set the intention of serving the sitter's highest good.
Yeah.
And that's what the reading is for. So, but having said that, yeah, sometimes.
So it is. Yeah.
Sometimes it does come out that you're going to sell your house on Tuesday, and somebody's really happy, or gee, I see you changing jobs, you know, moving up,
I mean,
getting a
things like that
promotion.
do
They come
come
through,
up.
sure, they come through too. But all the information that's coming through is coming for our highest good. Now, people ask how often they should get a reading. What do you think about that, Patty?
Well, I guess personally, I have, I think it depends on what's going on in that person's life. I mean, I've had people sometimes who want a reading once a week around the same issue, and I tell people, actually said, no, I don't think this is a good idea, because we're asking about the same thing again, and it's just too soon. And also, I don't want to encourage people to be dependent on me. I don't think that that's a healthy thing. So I will tell people that it's too soon. So how often? I mean, sometimes if someone's going through a crisis, maybe they need a reading 2 weeks later, and then maybe 2 weeks after that, but not on the exact same question. It would have to be a little bit different. Because after a while, I mean, if you do that, then the cards, I think, almost start to say, or the spirit starts to say, cut it out. This is silly.
I noticed
You
that
just asked me that.
they'll repeat the same thing. They just repeat
Yeah.
the same thing over and over.
The same
Sometimes
thing
I know
comes
that
up.
the reading is over. There are some people
Yeah.
who keep asking questions. Well, when am I going to sell my house? Is it going to happen on Tuesday? And Spirit is talking about the relationship with Mom, and that'll just keep repeating.
It will.
And what they're saying
No
is,
matter how many times you shuffle,
this is what we're talking
Yeah.
about.
I'm like, this is what you need to look at today. So I think
Yeah.
how often, I mean, I have clients who might come every couple of months, some people once a year. I mean, it really depends. Or some people might come a couple of times if they're going through a really hard time, maybe closer together and then not come. Do you have a particular time frame
Yeah.
you think is too often?
Yeah, I do. I don't read for people more often than every 3 months. Use readings as guideposts. Get a reading to help you see if you're on the right track, see if Spirit has something important to communicate, has some insight to offer.
Yeah, don't use readings as
A
crutch,
GPS system.
or as a crutch.
It's not a GPS system
Yeah.
mapping every turn in the road. Do I make a right on Elm Street? It's for your general good. It's going to help you to understand the general parameters of things that are going on, opportunities that are opening for you, spiritual insights that you need to see. It's not there to give you every twist and bend in the road and answer every question. And it becomes, some people become, I think, almost addicted to the
They do.
idea of getting someone to make their decisions for them so that they don't have to make them. And that is absolutely not what I'm here to do.
No, I steer very clear of that. If someone says, well, should I move to California? Should I get a divorce? I say, I can't tell you that. All I can tell you is what I see in the and we'll look at, if that came up, tell them what I see, but I will not ever tell somebody
You know what I
they-
often do
'cause I
see,
think
though,
that's
when someone
really-
asks that question? I often see that that person has already made that decision.
Usually they have, and maybe they're looking for validation for what they've already decided.
And what I'll tell them in that
Yeah.
instance is, what I see is that you've already made the decision, so what is your decision? Just get in touch with your or you know the answer to that. You don't need for me to
I
give
tell
you the
people that
answer.
too, and also I tell them to listen to their own intuition or their own inner voice, above and beyond anything, because we all have that. That intuitive, that little voice
Oh,
inside.
absolutely, that intuition, that's why we have
Yeah,
it.
that tells us, whether something's good or not so good, or just or a variety of other things. So I always encourage people to listen to that first
Absolutely.
and foremost. I don't read for anyone who's intoxicated, like somebody
Oh,
who's
heavens, no.
drunk. I mean, I had this awful experience
never-
once
that's never
where I was reading in a store, and this woman came in, and she was, she seemed like she was pretty intoxicated, and there had been a death in her family the night before or something, and she wanted a reading, and there was no way that I was going to do a reading for her. First of all, because she was intoxicated, and second of all, it was way too soon after this horrible traumatic event had happened. And I think after a death, there has to be at least probably 3 to 6 months, depending on the person and who, what the situation was, but certainly not right afterwards like that.
Yeah, that's never come up for me.
Yeah, that was it was upsetting.
That would be very
It was
upsetting.
it was very sad.
Now, should a reader reveal everything that comes through? There are two schools
Interesting
of thought on
question,
that. Some
yeah.
people say yes, some people say no.
Yeah, I feel, I do, generally.
I do too.
I don't really like to hold things back, and I don't like to maybe sugarcoat something.
The source is divine.
Yeah.
The source is perfect. If
We're
Spirit
really
is
just the
telling me,
conduit. We're the conduit for the information.
I'm certainly not going to edit Spirit.
No, I'm not either.
So if I wouldn't dream of it. If Spirit is showing me something that you're supposed to know, if they're showing it to me, you're supposed to know it.
Exactly. That's how I would see it too.
And so, yes, I will say whatever I see. Some people say, oh, no, I wouldn't tell someone about if I see a death coming or something like that. I have told people that, And if it's shown to me, it's something that I'm going to tell you because you're supposed to know about it.
Right.
It actually can be, it can really help someone. There was one instance where I told a woman that I saw her grandmother passing. And I said, if you have something to say to Grandma, say it, because I see her, or you need to get something straight with her, do it, because she's passing. And she said, that can't be, because my grandmother is already gone, or whatever, she's been gone forever, so she's not passing. I said, well, I'm just telling you what I see. I see that she's passing. Well, what turned out, this was amazing. She actually this woman hunted me down. I was at a store the next day.
Yeah.
She found where I was because she had to tell me this, or not the next week, whatever. What happened was that she had been adopted, and she never thought of her birth grandmother as her grandmother. That person passed.
Oh, how interesting.
And that person
Yeah.
passed a day or two later, and she realized that that's what it was about. Now, why did she get that message? She didn't have a particularly close connection with that person. It wasn't a personal loss to her. Why did she get that message? I think she got it so that she could really understand that Spirit was actually speaking to her, that it's a real thing, that Spirit knows who she is, cares about her, communicates with her, that it's real. And this could possibly open her mind and her heart up to a whole world of learning and personal experience with Spirit.
Oh, that's really something.
Yeah.
And sometimes
I
people
think that's
do,
what that was about.
like in that case, sometimes some clients will not relate to something as you're saying, and they'll be like, I'm really not sure what that is. And then I'll get an email or a phone call or something a couple of weeks later saying, oh, I know what that is. So sometimes things aren't always clear in the moment, and then they become clearer.
Well, sometimes they're in the
passing of
future.
time, or sometimes
They haven't happened yet.
They haven't happened yet. Or sometimes the person just isn't remembering or thinking clearly in that moment. And then
I think
sometimes
John
they realize
Edward calls that
psychic amnesia.
Yeah, psychic amnesia.
He does,
right.
yeah. And so it
You
does
say,
happen.
Ed, I don't know an Ed, until you say, oh, wait a minute, you mean my brother Ed?
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, that Ed, right. That kind of thing.
Yeah, and also, I wanted to also talk about, I think we mentioned this before about things, sometimes things not coming through in a reading and saying, well, what happened there? And this happened to me because the store that I worked out of, there was another tarot reader who also did readings there, and we used to trade readings for each other because it's, as you know, it can be difficult to read for yourself. And so she gave me a reading, and I think a few months later, after that, my husband was in a very serious car accident, and she was wondering, she was saying, oh my God, I wonder why that didn't, how could that not have come through? And then we both said, because you weren't supposed to know about it. Because actually, had I known about it, what could I do about it? Because it wouldn't have said it's going to happen on, December 17th, and it's going to happen in this location. So it would have been nothing that my husband or I could have done, and we just would have been crazy with worry.
That's right.
So knowing about that ahead of time would have served no purpose.
And sometimes we're supposed to react spontaneously. We're not supposed to have foreknowledge so that we're not prepared.
Yeah, sometimes we're not supposed to.
We're just not supposed to be prepared for something. We're
Yeah.
supposed to deal with it spontaneously as it happens, in which case
Exactly.
it is not going to show up. Because a reading is all about serving our highest good. If it doesn't serve our highest good, it's not going to be
it
there.
won't be there.
It's that simple. So everything isn't there. Everything in your life is not going to show up in a tarot reading. Only what you need to know to serve your highest good
Yeah, at that time.
at that time.
And what you need at that time may be very different from what you may need 2 months later.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Totally different things may come up. And also I wanted to say that sometimes, I've done readings for people who have passed, and usually it's pretty accurate. I mean, I don't see anything, usually I just have a feeling, and usually the stuff that I tell them is really pretty accurate. I don't, actually, the first time someone asked me to do that, I said, I've never actually tried this before, and I said, would you like to, we can give it a try and see what happens, and it was actually quite remarkable and quite moving for this person. So I do that occasionally. So sometimes I don't know if you also do that.
I absolutely do that.
Yeah.
I'm finding as time passes that more and more of the readings that I give, the tarot readings that I give, are about spirit communication. I mean, they're always about spirit communication because we're talking about communicating with with the divine, with spirit, connecting with spirit. But I'm finding as time passes that more and more of the readings I give are specifically about particular people who have passed or people who are unborn. If someone's pregnant, that comes through usually very loud and clear. I feel that spirit around the pregnant woman. But it happens a lot, yeah.
It does. It's been happening more.
So the card I'm going to be talking about is actually a card that sometimes seems to strike fear into the hearts of a lot of people. Oftentimes when this card comes up in a reading for someone, I can actually hear them gasp, sort of a, although some people seem, who know something about the tarot don't. They understand what it means. I believe you can see the card on the screen now. So the death card is sometimes feared, as I just said, and if you look at it, maybe you gasped as you saw it on the screen. But this card, what this card usually means is transformation, in the sense of a death of a part of your life, such as a relationship, or maybe your whole view of life, or your values, what's important to you, or change, some kind of inner change on a really, really profound level. This is not like a light, superficial sort of change. It would be very, very deep, a very deep sort of change. So it could be on many different levels. It could be physical, it could be recovering from from an illness, or it could be, like I said, ending a relationship or ending a situation that you're in that has been a big part of your life, or totally changing your career or your life direction. And it could just mean a whole variety of different things. But it is very, very profound. So some things that I'd like to point out on the card that really show that it is about change is that the first thing that you'll notice is that the skeleton on the horse, he's not disintegrating the way that a skeleton would. He's sitting upright on the horse, and it's also a white horse, and white is a symbol for purity. Although he is dressed in black armor, and he does have red on his hat, which symbolizes passion and action. And the other thing to note as well is in the background, in front of the horse's head, you can see a sunrise, which symbolizes a new beginning. And also, the black banner that he's carrying has a blooming, a fully blooming white rose on it, which really, and also to me, symbolizes the beginning or the blooming of a new part of your life, or a new era in your life, or a new situation. And the other thing that I think is really, really kind of neat is that there's a man in yellow. And yellow, symbolizes, kind of brightness and spirituality. And he's dressed in yellow robes, and he has his hands up, and it's almost like he's kind of, saying, "Come on," and he's sort of welcoming the horseman. And I see that as welcoming him into a new part of his or her life, or your life, if this is your reading, or my life, if it's my reading. And also in the background there's water, which is a symbol of spirituality in the tarot, and relates to the Suit of Cups. So it's sort of like a spiritual rejuvenation. And there's also, if you look really closely at that, near the water, there's green. There's stuff, there are things blooming, which is indicative of new growth. And you can also see purple in back of him, which is, it looks like sort of a bank, which is purple, or maybe mountains, or I guess the bank from the water. And purple is a color which is indicative of psychic or spiritual awakening or openings. So I really do see this card as transformation. And if you look sort of in back of him and under him, you can see a man who has fallen, and he's sort of going over him. And I think that really symbolizes the death of who this person once was, or the situation they were once in, that they are now leaving behind to go forward into something new. And I think it also relates, just to the cycle of birth, death, and rebirth, which is also a metaphor for the seasons. For winter being the darkness and making way for the new. And then we have spring coming, which is a deep change as well. So I really see this as a metaphor for deep change and transformation. So hopefully this has given you maybe a new perspective on this card, and hopefully if you have been a person who has been fearful of this card, or who has been one of those people who has gasped, or maybe even screamed when you've seen this card, that won't be the case again.
I'd like to talk to you about a card that is often misunderstood and sometimes all too well understood, the Three of Swords. You see this image coming up on your screen? It looks pretty scary. It's an image of a heart with 3 swords through it and a stormy sky behind it. Seems like it could only have one meaning, right? Well, wrong. It has a lot of meanings, so we're going to touch on some of those. The swords, the suit of cards, the swords, evokes the mental world, but often it connotes what we consider trouble or strife, arguments, bickering, gossip, worry, those sorts of things show up with the swords. Repeated errors in judgment and so on show up with the swords. And here we have a perfect example of what the swords can mean, with the swords going right through the heart. This card is the card of adultery, not surprisingly, cheating, 3 people in a relationship. But keep in mind that even if you get a card like this, of betrayal, that it can have a healing purpose, because anything that's being shown to us is being shown to us for our good, for our highest good. And so it's information we need to have. Use the information in a positive way, and you can grow from every piece of information that you're given. So, the sword, 3 of Swords, represents cheating, betrayal, absolutely. It also can mean too many people in a relationship, not in the physical sense of adultery or cheating, but that you're relying too much on the opinion of others. In the defense of this card, sort of frightening looking card, I can tell you that I personally know of at least one marriage that was, I'm not going to say the card saved their marriage, but that really helped people to come to an understanding who were having difficulties in their relationship, because it pointed out, not adultery, nothing like that, but it pointed out that there were too many opinions in the relationship. The opinions of the 2 people that matter are the 2 people in the relationship, not everybody else, cousins, daughters, sons, etc. And that's what was happening in this particular case. And so this card actually opened a door in the mind of the people who needed to hear it, gave them information they needed, and helped them to heal their relationship. So don't be afraid of any card that you see. Okay, having said that, the 3 of Swords also is the card of surgery. Now, I want to make it clear that no psychic reader ever gives medical advice, or ever should. However, if you're going in for surgery, if I see this card, I may ask, is there a surgery coming up around this person, if I feel that that's the case. And what it may be giving you is reassurance that everything is going to be fine, you're going to come through this just fine, you're going to sail right through the experience. It can be very reassuring. So keep that in mind as well. The swords should be always taken in context, like every card. Don't take any card, any single card, and say, oh, it means this, and then just go with that meaning, because you may be really selling yourself short. All of these cards must be taken in context in order to really understand their meaning. And the 3 of Swords can mean you're going to come through this just fine. You need to pay attention to your husband instead of your girlfriend, or other really healing messages. So the next time you see this card, before you jump to conclusions, stop and think, look at the context, and search your heart for what it's saying to you. So, what should a person look for and look out for?
Look out for.
And look out
Yeah.
for, more to the point, in
I
a
think
reader.
that's really important. I think one thing that you, well, there's a lot of things. I think what to look for is somebody who is very willing to explain to you how, how do they get the information that they're getting? How do they work? Someone who's willing to answer your questions. Because if somebody just says, oh, you don't need to know that, it's sort of like saying, kind of, I think it's really dismissive and rude. And I think that people have the right to ask questions about how you work and how the information comes through.
Sure.
And so I think that's very important. And also somebody who is going to keep your information confidential and private.
Absolutely.
I mean, you don't want all your personal business, gossiped about with, say that you live in the same town as the reader. You don't want the reader to think that the reader is going to be talking about your personal stuff with other people.
Absolutely.
And also somebody who is not on a power trip, somebody who's honest. And I guess on that line, to really beware of somebody who tells you that that they can take care of you, that they can fix your life. In other words, you'll see sometimes these ads about Madam So-and-so, who's a psychic or a tarot reader, and all 100% success guaranteed, fixes all problems with love, money, health, whatever. And that's just not possible.
Right. Anyone who claims to have
Yeah.
all the answers, I would steer away from.
I would too.
Anyone who tells you what to do, I would steer away from. Anyone who encourages you to keep coming back on a regular basis, I would definitely steer clear of. And maybe most important, anyone who says there's a curse on you.
Oh boy, yeah.
And keep coming back to me, and for $20 a pop or whatever it is, I'll work with you and I'll help you out. That person, I think, is...
$20 a pop, that's cheap. I've heard
Well, that's
people
cheap.
tell me that it was
Whatever.
hundreds and hundreds of
Whatever
dollars.
they're charging.
Oh, there's a curse on your daughter. I mean, I had some poor woman calling up saying that somebody had told her there was a curse on her daughter, and unless she paid her something like $500, her daughter would commit suicide. And the woman knew that it was, she kind of knew that it was ridiculous, but she was scared because it was her kid.
Sure.
And so people that do that are really, I think they're criminals. I think it's really
I think
criminal.
that's criminal, too.
And not to mention cruel, and cruel, very cruel.
So anybody who tells you, yeah, you're going to sell your house on Tuesday, I think is a liar. I don't think anybody knows that. I don't think any reader anywhere of any kind can be 100% accurate, know all, answer all questions, solve your problems, make your life right, or any of those things. Anyone who says they can do those things, I would steer clear of,
Yeah, really.
run away from.
Run away.
And
from
so
that.
what's the best way to find a reader? Probably word of mouth. Talk
I
to your
think
friends.
it is too. Find out who reads for them or who they like. And I guess these other guidelines about asking people questions about how they work would come, if you don't know anybody that knows a reader and you're calling, from an ad or something. And then you can sort of get a feel for where the person is coming from by asking them questions about the things that they say. So if they say, oh, come for a reading and I'll fix everything. You'll be fine after, then you kind of know
Bell
that
should go off. Bell should start
Yeah.
going off if you hear things like that. You know what? You might even use this show to give you some pointers. If you don't know questions to ask a reader, ask some of the questions that we've asked
Exactly.
and see what they have to say about them.
And listen to your gut feeling too. If you just don't have a good feeling about someone, that should tell you
Yeah,
everything you need to know.
definitely,
Yeah.
definitely. So when we're reading for someone, this is interesting. It's happened for me that I have read for someone, and that person actually didn't get a reading at
Oh,
all.
I've had that happen too. Yeah.
There was one time that really sticks in my head where I was reading, it was downstairs underneath this store, and sort of a New Age shop, and I was reading for this woman, And after I went through this whole story, there was a whole story there in the cards for her. And after I finished telling her this whole long story, she said, I understand everything that you're saying, but none of that is for me. It's for my sister who's upstairs.
That's happened to me too.
And I said to her, well, make your sister pay for the reading then, because she's the one who just got the reading. You know, so sometimes, what I'm saying is that sometimes somebody who's, I think of it as sort of your radar screen, somebody you care about, will get the reading. That's the person who needs the reading. Sometimes a woman sits down and her daughter is the one who comes through because her daughter's the one who's got issues and her daughter's the one who needs guidance right now. And so the information comes through for her daughter. Sometimes that person doesn't come through at all.
And I think that happens a lot in my experience with people who tend to be the caregiving type, or the kind of person who maybe thinks more and does more for others than they may do for themselves. And so they're always thinking about, oh my gosh, or thinking or worrying about other people's lives or problems or concerns. And so they come in and they don't get the reading, and that happens.
That's true.
To a lot of people.
You may be someone for whom this would work. This would be a really useful source of information, inspiration, guidance. If you think that it might be for you, check out those books. Talk to the people in your local New Age shop. Ask your friends and see if you can't find some information to help you start a study of the tarot.
Yeah, there's so much information out there and available
out there.
to you. It's definitely out there.
It's out there. If you think it's right for you, give it a try, because you might find profound lessons. We've taken profound
I think you can learn
life lessons from it.
I mean, not just, I've learned so much from my clients, but I've also learned, an awful lot about myself on a really deep level.
Get a deck of your
Tarot.
own. Get a deck of your own, one that feels right to you, and start working with it. And we wish
use
you
your
all
feelings.
blessings, all blessings.
All blessings.